now, and yeah, I'm excited to meet you.
Cool, cool. And yeah, just welcoming everyone again. Great to have you here. This is Dev Academy's sort of open evening. Just encouraging anyone to ask questions as we go. You're most welcome to pop them in the chat, or if you'd prefer, you can unmute yourself and just ask away. Yeah, questions or clarifications or the such. Cool. All right, folks. So I'll bowl on in to talk a little bit about why we exist as an organization. So our motto really is to be a better, kinder, more diverse tech industry. And we've thought pretty carefully about the role that we have in the sector. And we span definitely the education sector and also the tech sector. But the most important thing for us is that we are able to have an amazing experience for our students that effectively sets them up for their future. And 95% of people want a job at the end of this. So that's really why we exist. We, of course, are in the education sector, but we're not in it for the sake of giving you a diploma or a degree or a certificate. We're in it purely to get you work or to start your own business. So that's really our focus. We have three pillars. They are aroha, pono, and tika. So kindness, integrity, and effort. And those are the things that us as an organization and our staff, we live by, but also you as students will come in and you'll define those pillars for your cohort and for yourselves so that the experience is a fruitful one. So why Dev Academy? There's a lot of places out there in which you could learn software development. You've got online platforms, you've got university, you've got other short programs. So what makes us different, or what makes us unique? Well, it's a really short course. So it's 17 weeks if you do the full-time program, and it's at a level 6 qualification. So that's quite a high level. So level 3 is your last year of school. Level 4 and 5 is sort of polytech area. Level 6 is getting into almost at that graduate level. And to be honest, again, we're not that interested in qualifications and these sorts of things, but that signals that this is a hard program and this is a program that is going to take you a long way. You can do the part-time program, which is 46 weeks, which is still pretty full on. I mean, we recommend about 40 hours a week on our part-time program anyway. So yeah, it's a recognized qualification, and yeah, it's intense and full on and good fun. So our completion rates are really high. Well, we have to update that with our 2024 rates, but we haven't come back to work properly yet, or the team at least, so we haven't got that stat up to date. But year before last, it was at 97, and it remains pretty high. The reason for that is we have two main reasons for that. One is we have a really good ratio of teachers to students. So you're getting a lot of one-on-one support. You're getting a lot of dedicated support from teachers. The other factor is that we're really setting people up for success. So we're interviewing carefully so that we know what's going on in your life to be able to support you. We adapt our learning to support your learning style. If this program's not right for you, we'll talk to you about that, and we'll talk to you about other options, these sorts of things. So we're really setting you up for success. And we also have this motto of not leaving anyone behind. So if you're falling behind, we'll do everything we can to catch you up and to get you over the line. So we have a really high completion rate, one of the highest, or the highest, I think, in the sector. I've mentioned the teacher to student ratio. So we have at a maximum a 1-to-10 ratio, but often it's about 1-to-7. So you're going to see a number of teachers and they're with you the whole time. So if you're doing our full-time program during boot camp, which is the most intensive bit, that 9-week intensive, you're going to see a teacher from 9 till 5. And it's not going to be a 1-to-100 as you would see in a university lecture. It's going to be your team and a small group of teachers for a small group of students. And that's just how we like to roll. It's a little bit representative of a real life scenario that you'd expect in a tech team out in industry. And again, we're trying to replicate what you're about to see in industry so that you're ready for it. We also think that's a great way to learn. So we have two parts to our program. We have the technical component, which is really setting you up with coding and the ability to, well, I suppose, open that technical door, that software development door, and walk through that. That's a lot of setting up environments and coding and building projects and problem solving and learning heaps and collaborating with your colleagues and so on. There's huge amounts of that. And Joseph's going to go into a lot of the detail of that in the course. But we've also got this human side of it that brings humans into it. And this is the area that industry really, really values in what we do. Because we bring in this human component, it really takes a student from being a coder into a programmer, from being someone that can write really clean code to someone who can actually collaborate in a high performance team. And we do this in a very practical, hands-on way. And a lot of the industry folks that we talk to regard these human skills to be leadership skills as well. And leadership is a hard thing to find in tech. And it's also something that increases your responsibility and options after you get into industry. So employers do love Dev Academy graduates for a number of reasons. One is that they've got these human skills and technical skills, but another really, really important one is Dev Academy graduates know how to learn. And that's probably the single biggest advantage that you've got, is that as a Dev Academy graduate, is that you'll be able to learn and have this skill for life, that you'll be able to learn faster than others. And employers love this because the cost of taking on someone that is new to tech is huge. It's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when you have someone that can onboard really quickly, can get up to speed really quickly, and can provide a return on that investment really quickly, then you're starting to get amazing return on investment. And employers love that. But employers also love the fact that they can rely on Dev Academy to have a high standard, and that the graduates that they're getting are fantastic leaders and fantastic team players. The other thing is that we strive and pride ourselves on being safe and supportive for all. We do welcome and open our doors to anyone and everyone that wants to be here to learn. Now, I say that with the preface of you have to work exceedingly hard to do that, but we do welcome everyone and anyone. And we also welcome folks that have been ostracized from classical education somewhat. People that may have a learning speciality like dyslexia or dyspraxia, or ADHD or autism. We've had folks on myriad of spectrums, and they have been incredibly successful with us. In fact, some of the comments have been that this is the safest and most supported they have felt in a learning environment. So So look, if that's you or you're thinking about that, again, talk to us about how we do that, because it's something that we hold very close to our hearts. And there's a wonderful quote there from Caden: "Throughout the 3 years of my bachelor's, I felt like I remained the same person, whereas in the 3 months at Dev Academy, it transformed me." And that's, I suppose, another thing as well, is that this is a very personal journey, and our aim is not to, just provide you with a great experience to open the door into tech. It's to really give you a transformative and life-changing experience. And that's really awesome fun, but it's also quite pivotal in your life. Some of the skills that you will learn are really, really valuable for the journey of life. So, So the course overview, this part I hand over to Joseph, and you're basically going to wrap us through the course overview.
Yeah, for sure. So the course is kind of split into 2 different chunks. So there's the first part of the course, which is foundations. That's the first 6 weeks if you're doing full time. Pretty much for everything that I'm saying here, I'll just preface it by saying that the part-time course is exactly like the full-time course. It just happens over a longer period of time. So the everything kind of, if I'm talking about the full-time course, it kind of those same principles apply to the past part-time course. Just imagine yourself doing it half as fast, essentially. So yeah, in the course, the first 6 weeks in foundations, we cover it's kind of like an onboarding experience for everyone. So like Rohan was talking about, um, we have kind of people coming from a wide ranges of experience. Some people with computer science degrees, some people who have never programmed before, and everything in between. So found the role of foundations is to kind of like get people in where they're supposed to go. And then we have the boot camp. So I'm going to talk more about the boot camp and foundations a little bit more detail. But the main thing to kind of take away from this slide here is that regardless of whether you're doing part-time or full-time, you're going to be having experiencing the same curriculum, and it's just delivered kind of over a longer period of time. But it costs the same amount of money, and you receive the same kind of support. So for the full-time course, we offer some in-person cohorts as well. So there is in-person support available. It kind of depends on the numbers that we get for a certain intake. So for the intake that we have running right now, for example, we just started last week, they began foundations. We've got an in-person intake running in Auckland, and then more of a kind of like a hybrid online approach for students who are in Wellington. So you can come into the campus or do it online. And then we also have a completely online campus as well. So you're free to do the course full-time or part-time, regardless of where you are in the country. And yeah, here's the actual structure itself. So foundations, like I mentioned before, is the first 6 weeks. It's still full time, but it's kind of not quite as intense as the boot camp. And generally speaking, it's kind of more self-directed isn't the right way to describe it necessarily, because you're still working really closely with your facilitators, working with other people who are going through the course going through foundations at the same time as you. But it sort of shapes around the sort of the shape of your life a little bit more than the boot camp does. The boot camp is much more kind of like you're here at this time, you arrive at a certain time every day. You're kind of like having lectures and challenges at the same time every day, finishing at a certain time every day. Foundations is more open-ended than that in terms of the way that you want to use your time and when you want to be studying. So you might have kind of like one or two scheduled calls throughout the week with your facilitators and the other students that you're working with. But other than that, unless you kind of reach out and you say that you want some additional kind of like questions that you need help with, or you want some kind of like additional tutoring or additional time working with a teacher on some kind of problem, foundations is kind of like you working away on your computer on a predefined curriculum that we give you. And the kind of what really goes into that, and kind of talk about it a little bit more later, but it's basically like the classic introductory to web development kind of stuff that you experience. So that's like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the command line and Git, that kind of thing. For the bootcamp, it's kind of structured in three chunks, like three-week chunks. So and like I was saying before, it's much more structured. So regardless of whether you're doing the boot camp in person in like the Auckland location, for example, or if you're doing the completely online version of the course, you're still showing up at sort of 8:45 in the morning. You're meeting with a group of people either in person or meeting with them online, and then you are going to lectures and you're working on challenges with other people in a very collaborative environment. So it's quite different to foundations, much more structured, and it takes up basically like what feels like your whole life while you're doing it. You still obviously like you've got time to spend with your family and kind of take care of your children and stuff, but it's very much kind of the thing that you're doing at all times while it's happening. And then after the boot camp finishes is the careers session. So that's 2 weeks of working through, and Rohan will kind of cover this a little bit more later on in detail, working through all of the skills that you need to find that job after you graduate Dev Academy. We can go to the next slide. Part time, kind of picture in your brain all of those things that I said before, but like I said, now imagine that they're taking longer. So you're looking at around 20 hours a week for the time commitment for foundations, and it's 10 weeks long. And then for the boot camp, around 19 hours per week, and you're still working on all of the same projects, but you're doing it kind of like much more in a way that fits around whatever else you have going on in your life at the time. So in a way, working on the part-time boot camp is kind of more similar to the structure of foundations than it is in the full-time boot camp, because you have more time to kind of like work it around your pre-existing schedule. And especially that leaves opportunities for people who want to work on nights and on weekends, for if you've got like especially time-consuming family commitments and kind of other big things in your life going on. And then the careers week is the same. That kind of works the same way when you're in the part-time. And let's talk about the actual curriculum itself. So here in Foundations, like I talked about before, this is kind of your bread and butter of the web development world. You've got HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which are the three languages that kind of like work in tandem to create everything that you see on the internet, basically. And then working with Git, which is it's a version. It's called version control. It's basically like a way of saving your code in a more secure way than just saving a text file, and then having the ability to go back over the code that you've worked on previously and collaborate with other people while you're doing it too. And that's where GitHub comes in. It's sort of like cloud storage for your computer code. You can think of it kind of like that way. And that's where our whole curriculum lives, essentially, is up on GitHub, and that's kind of the way that you interact with it. So you spend a lot of time working with it and using the command line to do so. And employers really love that as well, because like Rohan was talking about earlier in the call, we try and emulate essentially the conditions of working in an actual tech office as much as possible. And what that looks like on a day-to-day basis is a lot of interacting with Git, is a lot of pulling code up and down from GitHub. And so that's just the way that we teach with our whole curriculum, just to kind of like further emulate that that kind of real in-world experience. And on the right here, you can see an example of some of the kind of stuff that we're building by the end of Foundations. So this is a tic-tac-toe challenge from Sprint 5 of Foundations. That's once we've kind of gone through the process of really sort of getting the groundwork of those three languages, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then bringing them all together to create little games and projects. That's kind of the sort of the end point of Foundations is kind of like being able to bring them all together and have something cool to show off from the other end. And now let's talk about the boot camp. So this is the first 3 weeks of the boot camp, phase one, they call it. There you're going to learn TypeScript. TypeScript is basically like a more modern, more kind of secure, I guess you'd say, but not like a security sense, but more in kind of like a preventing you from making a whole bunch of bugs and ruining your code kind of sense of the word security. It's what's known as a type strict language. So basically it's like JavaScript, but it has more rules in place to prevent you from making mistakes, essentially. We started teaching that fairly recently, within the last couple of years in our curriculum. And the reason for that is just because employers are more interested in seeing that now than they used to be. And so we started teaching it. And that's something that you kind of see a lot in our curriculum. Like, since I was a student at Dev Academy, maybe 9 years or something like that ago, I couldn't even count like how many times the curriculum has been completely rewritten since then. And that's because we really just have no loyalty when it comes to like what technologies we're teaching. We just teach the most popular stuff. Like, we work with our partners in the industry, and we kind of really talk to them, and we say, what is it that you would really want your new employees to know how to do on day one? What kind of technologies in the stack would you like them to know? And then we just teach those things. It's a very kind of straightforward and ruthless a way to kind of like destroying our old curriculum and starting again. So we also teach React, which is a client-side rendering library developed by Facebook. That is another thing I'm not going to kind of dive into the whole technical distinction of server-side versus client-side rendered websites right now. If you don't know about it, that's completely fine. But basically, it's just like there's different ways of making a website. We teach you how, in Foundations, we teach you how websites were made in the 1990s, which is kind of my favorite way. And then in the boot camp, you learn how to actually make websites the way that they're made today, using technologies like React, like TypeScript, and then with a big focus on testing as well, because employers love to, even if it's not necessarily fully happening in reality, they love to think of themselves as organizations that are very what they call test driven. It means you're writing all your tests for your code first. And then you're writing the code second. Whether that's really happening or not, people love to think of themselves that way. And so that's kind of the way that we teach. And it makes you, again, more appealing to employers in the future. So we can go to the next slide now. And then this is phase 2. This is my favorite phase of the bootcamp, the server-side phase. This is when we start working with databases in the back end, working with server-side technologies. And that is using a library called Express for the most part, which is a library kind of housed within Node, which is like the server-side version of JavaScript. And then we also get into doing a little bit of authorization stuff like password, hashing, and salting, and all of that kind of stuff, which is really fun. And then we use SQLite for our databases in the back end. There are a few different kind of like different ways that people architect databases basically. And the most common one that people end up kind of like using or learning is generally SQLite. So that's the one that we teach as well. And go to the next slide now too. Phase 3. Phase 3 is all about projects. So we kind of take everything that we've learned from the first 2 phases, and then kind of like in Foundations, where you spend the first few weeks kind of getting those basic concepts under your kind of like in your control, and then you can start building bigger things with them at the end. The same thing happens in the bootcamp. So you spend the first 2 phases really understanding all of these different pieces of technology, and then bring them all together in the final phase. So what that looks like a lot of the time is working on bigger projects. Your facilitator might say like, hey, over the next 3 days, you're going to build Twitter. And then you will work with a group of people and kind of like divvy up the tasks, decide on who's going to be doing what. And then at the end of it, you'll kind of like, at the end of the week, you'll show off how it went, and you'll talk about all of the things that went well and all the things that were a complete disaster. And then at the very end of phase 3, which is kind of like the end of the bootcamp, sort of like the final boss, is the final group project. So that's a whole big week-long project where you, first off, everybody pitches ideas that they have for ideas that they think will be cool for the project. And then some of them get selected, and then everybody forms in teams around those ideas and then spends a week making something really cool. And then once that's done, there's like a big evening, either in person or online, where everybody shows off what their final projects were. And those final projects, like Rohan was talking about earlier, when it comes to getting jobs like these, the kind of jobs that you're looking to get in technology as like a kind of a entry level, a graduate level developer, as you would say, the people who are hiring for those jobs are way less interested in what kinds of qualifications you have, and way more interested in seeing your code, seeing your portfolio. And this big final group project that you do at Dev Academy is kind of like the jewel in the crown of your portfolio. You've got lots of little projects throughout the way that you can show them and talk about, and then this is the kind of the big, really cool thing that you make at the end. And yeah, let's talk about the next thing here. So this is just kind of like a run through of what a sort of an average day might look like at Dev Academy. You arrive at, like I was saying, kind of 8:45 or so in the morning, and there is an opportunity to check in and then just kind of like have a little time for mindfulness as well. Sometimes it's just kind of like 5 minutes to sit there in silence, and it's pretty good, honestly. Like depending on the kind of person you are, you might come into practices like that, like mindfulness, like meditation, with a little bit of kind of skepticism, and think that it's kind of like a little bit like woo woo. And I think that I kind of have a certain degree of that in myself as well, but it really does, like, especially when you spend all day looking at a computer, looking at code, and it kind of like swarming around your brain like a whole bunch of angry bees. Taking that time for stuff like meditation, stuff like yoga, is actually, it serves a cold utilitarian purpose, not just kind of like whatever sort of like kind of like more high-minded or spiritual things you might get out of it as well. Um, and then in the morning, there is a lecture or a human skills deep dive. So if it's a lecture, it's kind of like a lecture on some sort of programming topic, whatever it is that you are going to be focusing on for the day. Normally, it's kind of like an hour or so long. And your teacher will demonstrate some code, show you kind of like what kind of stuff we're going to be working on for the day and how to get it working. And then for the human skills deep dives, those can be on a whole range of things, like kind of like how to give and receive feedback effectively, like a lot of stuff on how to work with other people in sort of like collaborative and effective ways, and then also kind of like how to treat yourself with kindness, especially when you're trying to learn something really hard like programming, like the kind of the you and your internal critic are often kind of your own worst enemy when it comes to learning something hard like this. So there is also definitely a big benefit in that kind of side of the course as well. And then there is pretty much most of the time on the boot camp when you're programming, you're going to be doing pair programming. Not all the time, but it is basically like it's a much more efficient way of learning really quickly when you're pairing with somebody else. So that what that actually looks like in practice is you and another person sitting at the same computer together, or if you're doing it online, doing it remotely, kind of like working in a coding environment where you can both be interacting with the code at the same time and on a call on Discord. And you the reason why it's kind of like more effective than just trying to work alone is that one of you might kind of know 50% sort of about how something's working or what to do, and the other one might kind of have maybe the other 50%, or you might both maybe have 25% and sort of like try and overlap your Venn diagrams in a way where you can kind of be explaining things to each other and start making progress that way. And you end up writing better code if you're pair programming, and then also in a learning environment, you end up learning a lot faster too. And then we've got a lunch break. There's a nice big juicy lunch break at Dev Academy. So it's like an hour and a half long every day, or sometimes 2 hours long on the week, depending on if there's some kind of like on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I think maybe it's 2 hours long. And that's because there's also time built in there for yoga and well-being time. So if you don't want to do yoga, then just time for you to just relax and not be looking at a screen for a while, ideally, for best for your kind of brain and eyes. And then there's a lecture in the afternoon, which is kind of similar to the morning lecture. It'll be like on a topic sort of adjacent to the thing that you were working on that morning. And then more pair programming, and then also some kind of focused on testing as well. That's just sort of peppered throughout the entire course, really, is kind of like an emphasis on teaching you how to test your code and how to make sure that it's working the way you think it is. And then there is time for group projects. So this isn't you're not doing group projects every day, but normally towards the end of the week there will most weeks there will be a group project on kind of like Thursdays and Fridays. And then this day kind of runs until, if you're doing the full-time course, around 5:15 kind of time, where you sort of normally check out for the day. And then also, there's kind of, you need to be finding times to be doing additional study outside those mandatory kind of 8:15 to, 8:45 to 5:15 kind of times, because you won't always finish everything throughout the day that you're working on. You might get maybe 60, 70% into a challenge before time is up and you have to move on to something else. So you also need to find times in the nights and on weekends, if you can, to kind of like carve out time for study as well during the boot camp. And human skills. Sure, Rohan, I know that you've had kind of like quite a you've worked a lot with the human skills team before in the past, and you were kind of there during the inception of the human skills curriculum. Would do you feel like you may be in a better position to talk about this?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yep. So I even taught it way back in the day as well. So yeah, the human skills program you've heard about before. This is where we're integrating, I suppose, the technical side of software development into larger teams into a bigger thing, and being able to do that in a high performance sort of team way. So we will take you through each week on Bootcamp a deep dive. Some of the deep dives are listed here. So listening and empathy, well-being, giving and receiving feedback, self-compassion, courageous conversations, diversity and inclusion. These things here we deep dive into, and then you'll put them into practice as you go through. Now, they're all fairly self-explanatory, I guess. What is the important part is the practice of learning these things, hearing different perspectives around the room, understanding how you sit in, quite a varying array of opinions. We don't tell you how to think this stuff. We don't say, oh, you've got to have empathy, you've got to do this, or you've got to do that. What we say is that think about the situation you're in. Think about the diverse team that you're working for at this company, and you've got a range of people there. How are you going to get the most out of those people? What position are you putting yourself in? Are you just speaking from your own position, or are you speaking from the position of the whole team? Having a difficult conversation about something that's gone wrong, or about someone that is not gelling with you, or someone maybe that's annoyed you or hurt you, that's a really important conversation to have. And in fact, not many people, not just in tech, but not many people in general, have the tools to have those courageous conversations. So these are some of the things that you'll delve into. They are important. And in fact, we teach these things also to industry folks who actually go into tech companies and take a whole sort of technical team, and potentially an executive and managers and so on, through this program of study that really puts, I suppose, our technical environment into one that has got more of a human component to it. There are these things called one-on-one check-ins as well, which are basically us checking in with you and your learning, making sure you're getting the most out of it. Often these are times to talk about any blocks or barriers in learning, but also any potential difficulties in the class that you're having as well. We also have tech-ins too that basically do that on a technical level. So if we're looking at your coding and so on, and you've got blocks or gaps, we're talking to you about that. Now, Joseph, did you talk about AI at all and using AI to code?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. So we really encourage the use of AI to take away the boring stuff. However, it's kind of a waste of time using the AI to write your code, unless we tell you to, because it just kills your learning. And it's really obvious, and people do it every now and then when they're tired. And we basically just send it back to you saying, hey, that doesn't look like your work. Better get down and do that yourself, just so that you've got that learning module sort of done. But AI is a powerful thing in our environment, and it is going to be something that's here to stay, and it's a really useful tool as well. So we do touch on it. In fact, my co-founder Joshua just released a video today or yesterday, I think, on coding for devs, and it's part of our curriculum, and it's an ongoing development in our curriculum as well. So that's the start of human skills. We put this into practice. So you, at the start of the day, you're going to be checking in and arriving on campus, or arriving into your virtual campus as well. And you will have a group of people that you check in with. This is really similar to a check-in with your tech team when you get your tech job. You'll sit around and you go, hey, what went well yesterday? What didn't go well? How are you feeling about, today? What's on your backlog? This sort of, just checking in on a personal level, but it does touch on obviously that, the work side of things as well. We have opening and closing circles again. We're as a team, we're checking in and saying, hey, this is our task for the day. Has anyone got anything they'd like to share that's relates to the task that might inhibit or help or enhance what we're doing? Any sort of announcements we've got through the day. So there's a lot of check-in, and we're all doing this together. You might have taken part in educational experiences that are quite isolating. This one's not. This one's really engaging. It's really team-based, and you can't really hide away. So even if you do this from the comfort of your own home virtually, you're still going to be partaking very, very closely with your cohort. We do a lot of pair programming, and this is going to be one of the most rewarding and frustrating things that you do. Again, the tech sector loves the fact that we spend a lot of time here because it's a really, really valuable skill for efficiency and for effective work output, but it's also something that's done really, really badly. So when we practice it, it gives you some amazing skills that employers are looking for. Basically, what it is you're working very, very closely with another software developer on the same piece of code.
Yeah, it's really funny as well. Like there's the juxtaposition between the two skills of programming and talking to another person couldn't be more far from each other in terms of like the experience of doing them. Like when you're learning to code and you're talking to a computer every day, it tells you exactly what it is thinking at all times with 100% honesty. And it working with another person, like it is extremely rare for it to not be an awkward dance of emotions and histories and anxieties and everything like all coming to the front when you're trying to work with another person. So it's really fun and confusing to like combine those two things and work collaboratively with another person on code.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I'm a nice, kind, sort of, good intention type person, but I can be really hard to work with for a lot of people because I have ADHD, I'm dyslexic, and I'm all over the place, and I'm really really excited about something, and you've just got to work with me, and also I've got to think very carefully about that person I'm working with. So it's not about intent, and it's not about but I'm a good person. It's really about who we are as people and what makes us unique, and making that uniqueness work along someone else who's also unique. And when you think about it, if you've got a room of, or if you've got a tech team of 15 people, that's 15 areas of uniqueness that have to gel and work together. So you see why human skills and pair programming and teamwork is so incredibly important, and why we dwell on it so much, because you get that right and a team will absolutely hum. If you're interested in this stuff, have a look at the Aristotle project by Google. It was done some time ago, but it looked at high performance teams and what was the biggest factors in high performance teams. And it came down to emotional safety and human skills. So really, really fascinating stuff. We also do lightning talks, which are basically you jumping up in front of your cohort and talking about something that you've researched. You'll be doing this in your teams. You'll also be doing this in front of your cohort. You might not like public speaking. Don't worry, no one really likes public speaking, apart from maybe Joseph and me. But you'll get better at it, and we do it in a way that I think you'll really enjoy, and it will rather than being a fearful thing, it'll be a challenge, but it won't be as bad as you think. We do have yoga and well-being time. We do yoga because it's actually one thing that you can do in an office. It's not that we just love yoga. It's just something that's very easily done virtually. You can do it from your own home and so on without much more than a mat or just yourself. But yeah, we really want you to go out and use your body as well, because our brains are awesome, but they're even awesomer when they're connected to a functional working body. And we do mindfulness practice as well. Again, you may have practiced mindfulness or meditation or not. We're not interested so much in the woo-woo factor. We're really interested in brain activity, and we all nerd out on getting our brains to be really, really effective and well oxygenated and well oiled so they can learn fast. And there is unequivocal evidence that mindfulness really, really helps with this. I find it still hard, and I've been doing it for 10 years. But so if you've done it and you've gone, it's not for me, that's cool. You can always check out. That's no problem. But I strongly encourage you to give it a go when you're doing our program, because that practice brings it in. And it really, it's hard, but it still helps. It helps your brain.
Yeah, I was raised by Buddhist parents. I've been doing it my entire life, and I still find it completely impossible.
Yeah, cool. Okay, career skills. So this is kind of the finale, right? Like this is the thing that happens right at the end. You've become a software developer. You know you can do this. You can code. You can't believe what you can build. But now you've got a different job on your hands. and that is to find work. Finding work has nothing to do with being a software developer, really, because finding work is a job in itself. And I do a lot of teaching in this space. This is really my forte. I do a lot of support of students one-on-one. And this is a part of the program that I'm incredibly interested in, and I take a lot of responsibility for. So what we do in our first week is we have a look at what the tech market is looking like. And right now, it's just starting to pick up again. It's been really, really hard, okay? Probably the hardest we've ever seen it. So that post-COVID time, particularly 2003, I think was the hardest, but even 2023 was the hardest. But even a little bit of 2022 and 2024 was definitely hard as well. But it's slowly picking up. Certainly not being helped by our economy being crap, but the rest of the world's economies aren't as crap as ours. So we're slowly being drawn out of that recession by other countries. So it is gently getting better. Just bear in mind that a lot of tech companies in New Zealand do get funding from the States. And also if they're working overseas, generally their product is absolutely banging right now if they're earning a different currency. So just bear that in mind. And that's where a lot of the work is. Although we've just with a couple of companies locally, I'm just seeing amazing things. So even some local companies that haven't got particular niches outside of New Zealand, they're doing well too. But it's not the best time. So the best time was during COVID. Pretty much, people didn't even need to job hunt much. There was just jobs being flown around all over the place. But at the moment, it's still hard work, and you still need to do some really concise learning in this space and some really dedicated activity to be able to create the opportunities. And I'm going to go into those in these next points. So we have a formula about job hunting. It's not about looking at job boards and applying for roles on Seek and Trade Me. In fact, that's a very, very small part of what you will do, less than 5%. Okay, and the reason that is it's hard work. You're competing against thousands of people that do that, and usually that's the only place that people go, and that's why people find job hunting really, really hard. Now that's the safest thing to do. It's a really safe thing to do because you don't get people calling you back, so you don't feel like you have to put yourself out there and do a job interview. But it's also not going to produce the results, so there's not much point doing it. So what we do is we do a lot of career planning. So we do a lot of work on things like CVs and cover letters. We create a really good online professional sort of profile on LinkedIn, but also on GitHub. We even encourage doing a portfolio. And we prepare you for this, I suppose, this theatrical sort of job hunt that you have to sort of, do this networking and put yourself out there and then do this interview, which is really artificial and really intimidating and hard to do. But we demystify that, and we have a bit of a formula. And look, our formula works. For the people that follow it, it really, really works. And again, we get a huge amount of feedback from our graduates on how valuable the careers part of the program is. Because as a school, and if you've done any sort of study anywhere, most places, in fact, pretty much all, really don't support you much into your job. Now, we think it's just as important as being a software developer. And we do not stop doing this work with you until you've found work. So we are available as much as you need us until you find work. And I can't stress that enough. And even with that support, it's still hard. But the people that use us, they report back that it's a better experience. They get work faster, and we know this because we collect the stats. And they're getting better jobs and better offers because they're able to have choice, and they're able to negotiate their salaries, and they're able to find the companies that they really love. We have the next slide. Okay, in week 2, we bring in a lot of speakers. So speakers from companies that may be hiring, former graduates to share their experience of the industry. And it's a great opportunity to ask questions, even sort of silly questions like, hey, I still don't feel like I can code properly. What is it? Is that a problem? And graduates will be able to talk to you about how the fact is that they still have no idea and they're 6 months into the job. There's just so much to learn. You always feel like you're in the deep end, and you feel like you're out of your depth. There's a lot of work in these couple of weeks as well around preparing yourself for interview. So we will go through a lot of questions on, all those difficult ones of tell me about yourself, tell me about a time where you made a mistake. What are your biggest strengths? What are your biggest weaknesses? These are things you will get asked. And the good thing is we're going to spend hours and hours of practicing how to answer these, so that when it comes time to the interview, you're absolutely able to mic drop these answers. And that's going to feel good, because you only get a few opportunities or a 40-minute opportunity to secure your dream job at your dream company. And if you're not going to nail that in that 40 minutes, then you've kissed an opportunity goodbye. So we really take a lot of time to prepare you for that. Some of the other things that we do as well is we go into, what is it like to job hunt when you're an introvert, or when you're an extrovert, or when you're a mixtrovert? Or what's it like to network when you don't want to hand out a business card to everyone in the room, but you actually want to do that more virtually? And that's a really important thing as well, because again, we're not taught how to job hunt. And it's actually not as hard as a lot of people think when you've got the right tools. So we do go into that a lot. Also, bear in mind that you've got a huge asset out there, and that we've graduated close to 1,700 graduates in tech. And that's a lot of people out there in jobs already over the last 11 years. So, and many of them are hiring, many of them are in New Zealand, but also in Australia, in the States, and overseas. So there are actually opportunities through those folks. And again, a lot of graduates are getting jobs through the graduate network, okay, through those alumni that are in jobs already. Let's jump on to the next slide. Okay, so is this course for me? Let's go through some of the things around the requirements and so on. And again, if you've got any questions, please just sing out. Let's talk about course fees. So the course is $12,497. That's a relatively expensive, or a lot of money for a short period of time. But again, the money is reflective of the amount of teachers that we have and the amount of support that we give. Bear in mind, we only have you for 700 hours. And for a lot of that, you're really being taught in an intensive way with a lot of teachers. Believe me, we don't make a huge amount of money doing this. Our business is, we really want to transition it to a charity, so that it goes from a limited liability or private hands into a charitable status. We're not here to make tons of money. We're really here to be able to create impact. So believe me when I say we put a huge amount of money into that teaching and really expensive program to be able to do in the way in which we do. But it is effective work. All fees can be covered by student loans if you're eligible for a student loan. And if you're a first-time learner, you still may be eligible for fees free. Now, I just got the internet is unstable thing. Did you hear that, Joseph?
No, that was good. You sounded nice.
Cool. Oh, awesome. Yep. No, that's good. That sounded nice. You can get StudyLink allowances as well for the full-time program. The allowance option, but it just gives you a little bit of income if you're eligible whilst you're studying. And look, we can help you sort all this out. We've got a dedicated team here that really help you navigate the process of student loans, allowances, fees free, and working with StudyLink. So don't feel shy about contacting us and saying, hey, I need a bit of support with this, or I've been rejected from my loan. What do I do? It's actually really common. Just talk to us and we'll make sure that you're actually not eligible. It'd be very, very unusual if you're not eligible for fees. A student loan. Cool. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, that's it. I want to talk a little bit before we go about sort of requirements and these sorts of things. So it's a level 6 program, as I mentioned. We don't require you to have high school credits or have a level 5 or a level 4 program under your belt already. What we require is that you are motivated and that you have the time to dedicate to this program. And that's really what we're going to talk to you the most about. Do you love this? How do you know you love this? Have you coded before? And do you really, really want to dedicate lots of time to this? Now, we do take the majority of folks have never coded much at all who have come through our program, but they've at least given it a go. They've jumped on Code Academy or the Odin Project or Team Treehouse, these sorts of things, and they've had a play. Okay. But we will take you from zero to hero. That's cool. But you've got to enjoy it. You've got to know that you're going to be able to enjoy this. And that's an important one that we'll talk to you about. But as far as prerequisites goes, it's motivation. Obviously, you need to be able to use a computer, basically. You don't need to be able to touch type. But yeah, having familiarity with a computer is important. But that's the only real prerequisite. Joseph's talked to you a little bit about the part-time and the full-time program. And again, our part-time program is really to be able to do our course whilst having a family, whilst working potentially at least part-time, whilst having responsibilities. So yeah, look, have a think about that. If you have any questions now, go for it. And if you finish, or if you're watching virtually after the fact, and you have questions, please do contact us. I'm just going to see there's a couple of questions that have been DM'd to me, and also a couple on my list here. Okay, cool. So someone's asked a little bit about the job hunt and how long it takes folks to get work, and I want to talk about that. So how long it takes you to get work is really, in a way, it's up to you, okay? So some people, when they graduate, they have to go back to their old job and earn an income, and they job hunt on the side. Now, obviously, that's going to be harder for you because you're working, let's say you're working 30 hours a week. You've got to keep up your coding, so you've got to code for 15 hours a week. Suddenly, your week's getting very big, okay? And you don't have a lot of time to job hunt. So those folks are going to take a little bit longer. But what you shouldn't do is stop the coding, because you've got to maintain your skills, and you've also got to be able to job hunt. And again, we can schedule in a weekly call with you so that you can keep up to date with what's going on. We can review what you're doing. We can really support you in a dedicated way on going to job hunt, and that'll be really effective. Okay. We can also prepare you for a job interview, so we can run through some interview questions. We can review CVs and changes in your CVs, these sorts of things. So again, you've got our support, as I say, for as long as you need. The more time you have available, though, to job hunt, the better. So some people don't have to work at all, and they're in the luxurious position of being able to dedicate all their time to either coding or job hunting. And that's great, because that takes the least time possible to be able to get work. And this is where each week I would be supporting you and recommending that you'd be applying to a minimum of 5 companies and really making sure that you're getting through to humans who are looking at your CV and telling you whether they do or do not have a job. Okay. And we'll do this quite systematically. This is the formula. And after a couple of months of doing this, what we do is we start to realize that we've got a number of opportunities there at various stages. Some of them you will have had an interview and you're at sort of, negotiation stage. There may be a job, there may not. You may have done a couple of interviews and there's been a firm no from them. But again, I'm going to be teaching you how to leave that door open so that if an opportunity comes up, which it often does after the interview, then you're the first person to be called, these sorts of things. You'll also be potentially working on graduate programs. You might be working on potentially contract work, maybe even some overseas contract work, these sorts of things. But the idea is creating a lot of opportunities so that at some point something lands and you start to be able to make some choices. Do I take this job? Do I wait for a better one? I've got a couple of offers. What do I do? Do I carry on with my contract work? Do I look at these offers? That's where we want to get to. And that's basically a great outcome. And how long it takes, I'd say people that are able to really dedicate lots of time to this and are incredibly active in the market, sometimes they're able to get jobs in 2-3 months. And that's really, really fast. Because if you think about it, you apply for a job, you go through an interview process, you do a technical test, you meet HR, you have a bit of negotiation, you meet a CTO and maybe the rest of the team. There's a lot of interactions there. So 3 months is actually quite quick. Okay. So just bear that in mind when you're thinking about your finances and so on. And some people are taking 6 months, okay, because they're going back to an old job. They're doing a bit of coding and they're doing this in a much slower manner. Okay. And for some people, they might forget to do a bit of coding and they have to play catch up. And that can be really hard. They feel like they're losing their edge. And that's a bit more intimidating when they're going out into the job market, these sorts of things. So they might come back into Dev Academy and dedicate a bit of learning each day so that they can brush up on their skills before they go out and job hunt. We have some people choosing to take 3 months to redo the whole curriculum to really get a lot better at coding before they go out into the job hunt. And that's fine. We don't recommend taking too long because I think there becomes a time when you're just delaying the uncomfortable feeling of going out and putting yourself out into the market. But yeah, we'll check in with you about that. If we think you're mucking around and taking too long, we'll tell you and we'll say, hey, you are definitely ready to job hunt. Let's go and do that together. I know it's scary, but let's do it. Again, I want to stress that we don't have huge numbers of students, so we can do this. We can spend good amounts of time with you to be able to really support you into work. And a lot of our grads don't use us enough. I have more time and our team has more time to spend with you. So if you need us, we are there. So yeah, that's a really important thing to sort of stress.
That goes for the technical teaching team as well. Like in terms of our teacher to student numbers, it gives us the ability to spend a huge amount of time engaged in one-on-one support with students when they need it. And I see this a lot, especially in the foundations world where I teach, where because foundations can be more self-directed experience, I have some students that I'm catching up with 1 or 2 times a week, and the catch-ups are very short. Hey, how's it going? It's going great. Do you have any problems? No, this is good. This was broken. This is fine, and it's good. And then I have other students that I'm talking to every day, all day, messages back and forth, helping them through projects, and I'm spending 30, 40 times more time working with those students, and everything in between. And that's completely fine. It's the same in the technical teaching side as the careers team side. We really just have as much time as you need us for until you can get where it is that you want to be.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, nice. There's a question here as well around being able to work in animation or gaming. Now, I'll hand over to Joseph to talk a little bit about the gaming sector because it's a pretty cool and exciting sector, and you've obviously worked in it, Joseph. So do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, in terms of working in the kind of programming side of gaming, the development side of gaming, it is actually a really big growth industry in New Zealand. It's the fastest growing part of our tech sector in New Zealand, year on year. And there's a really good community, the New Zealand Game Developers Association, for joining and finding jobs within that network. So there are a lot of opportunities there, and in every major or even most of the minor New Zealand towns, there's NZGDA GDA meetups, so groups of the game developers who get together and show off the kind of stuff that they're working on. And that's actually how I ended up getting into the industry, was going to these meetups in Christchurch, and then there being other people who attended those meetups who worked at a game development studio called Cerebral Fix in Christchurch, and then me just talking to them at these events, and then going along was what ended up me leading to me getting the interview and the job. And everything, all of that was with the skills that I learned as a student at Dev Academy. So we're primarily teaching JavaScript like at Dev Academy, but most of the kind of the game development jobs that you'll see available in New Zealand and really everywhere are writing in C# normally. And the differences between JavaScript and C# are incredibly small. Like especially the differences between TypeScript and C#, which we teach on the bootcamp, are even smaller. It's like the semicolons go in a different place here, and the bracket goes in a different place here. Like literally, like the most trivial differences of all. So your skills absolutely pretty much one-to-one transfer from one language to the other. And then the process of actually getting into the industry is just learning how to use an engine. So for me, it was learning how to use Unity, and I already knew how to do all the coding side of it already. And then for the technical interview process, they basically just kind of say like, okay, go and make a game, and then come back and talk to us about it in a technical interview. So that's how it went for me. For animation, that's kind of a different skill set. Like if you're going to be working in the animation side of the games industry, you're going to be looking at using Blender or using Maya, probably if you're working in a three-dimensional environment. And if that's really the like specific niche, like the kind of more graphic design, visual design kind of side of things is the part of the industry that you're looking to get into, then I would say go. The things that we're going to be teaching you at Dev Academy are not relevant to that because we're teaching programming, and that's kind of more of like an artistically focused kind of course. So there are definitely opportunities to do that out there. But yeah, for sure, the getting into the gaming industry from Dev Academy is completely valid, and we've had, I know a lot of other graduates also do it as well.
Yeah, and that's it. Like again, we teach you how to learn, and if you can take that skill into a number of different fields. And Joseph's right, like animation is a little bit out there, but we've had a couple of folks work at Weta, and they were not working in animation, they were building the tools for animation. Okay, so they were actually building technical tools and coding tools in C# for animators and so on. So that's a little different and a little bit sort of out there. We've also had a number of people that come into Dev Academy, and they may be from a design background or an artistic background, and they're really interested in things like Blender or D3 or something like this. And they're sitting on the periphery of that sort of artistic, creative, very highly visual sort of side, and the technical tooling behind that. I think that's a pretty awesome space to be in. So don't feel like, maybe your previous career or feel like these spaces are exclusive. They're not, and you will be able to get into them. But it might not be the first job you get.
Yeah, and even if you are working in kind of more of the visual side of things when it comes to like media production, game design, stuff like that, underlying, like Rohan was talking about, underlying all of that is code at every level. Like ultimately, if you're using a computer to build something, code is the underlying phenomenon there. And so like when you're working with, like, let's say you're working on kind of like more of the visual component of things, you might be like, oh well, actually I really need to be working with shaders, because shaders are the thing that they're what every time you're seeing something, you're looking at a shader in a video game or any kind of visual effects medium. And shaders are all code, and they're really fun to write. So yeah, it is all ultimately code at the end of the day.
Cool. Okay. Look, there is another question here, just around people working overseas. So I wanted to talk to that a little bit. So our qualification is it's internationally recognized, not because everyone knows the qualification overseas. It's more because when you go through Dev Academy, everything you do becomes your portfolio, and that portfolio is recognized, or people can read it worldwide. It doesn't matter what language they're in and so on. They can see the fact that you can code and how much work you've done on our program, and it becomes a really valuable tool. So we've got folks in all over the place, working in different places. I'd say there's a lot of folks in Australia working because obviously it's pretty close to New Zealand and it's classic for Kiwis to go over there. And especially now, because they don't have a recession, they have a shit ton of jobs and they pay really, really well. So we're seeing a huge number of our grads going over to Australia to work and loving it, like getting really, really good pay. But also if you can work in somewhere like the States or if you can work in Europe, again, Kiwis are loved overseas. And particularly if you've got some good practical coding skills, you'll do well. The second part to the question asks, is it possible to work from New Zealand for an international company? Now, the answer is yes, and more so now than ever before. So post-COVID, we've seen a huge amount of, well, a move towards more remote first work or hybrid work, but we've also seen that move to cross borders as well. Certainly, certainly in English-speaking countries, being able to outsource work into somewhere like New Zealand. And the good thing that's really well known is that New Zealanders are good at what we do. We're also really good to work with, very honest and very effective in our work. But we're cheap as well. Like compared to any other currency, we're much cheaper than most. So we've had folks that are working into Europe, earning the euro, and they might only be 6 months into their career and they're earning 70, 80 euros an hour, which is pretty good. Now you have to build up your brand and you have to get good at that. But if you can, it's a really effective way to earn some good money whilst in New Zealand. If you're earning US dollar, it's similar, right? Like you can get $100 an hour US, that's really good. Or $80 an hour Australian, that's great, right? So just bear in mind that, again, we can help you do that. In fact, Joshua and I started a company with some of our graduates to be able to pick up these contracts and do overseas contracts. That company is now being carried on by those graduates and is now still doing that. And we can help and support if that was something that you wanted to do. We could dedicate all our time to it, but we could just point you in the right direction and help you set those sorts of things up.
Yeah, you're really lucky as a New Zealander. I think it's probably the only nationality that I can think of where overseas you're just universally liked. Like we just don't, New Zealanders don't have any bad baggage associated with them that some other countries do.
Folks, I forgot to mention at the start, we were going to have a graduate come in live and do the interview, and I'm sorry we didn't do that today. The good news is, though, is we're sending out the past 3 interviews that we did of our graduates, so 3 different graduates, in an email that'll be with you tomorrow. Okay, so you will be able to hear directly from 3 of our graduates around their experience, and I'll ask them just questions about their role, how they landed the role and what it's like, and are they using the skills, these sorts of things. Now, that was going to be live today, and I'm sorry I didn't make that happen. But yeah, as I say, we will get that recording out to you. We've come to the end of our spiel, and I've run out of questions here on my list. Is there anything that folks are sitting on that they would like to ask Joseph or myself?
Hey boys, I just had a question.
Sure.
So I was just thinking, you mentioned maybe going through the process and the careers later on, applying for around 5 jobs a week. Just from what I've seen so far, I haven't really seen like a massive amount of junior or entry-level jobs available in New Zealand. So I was just kind of wondering if, for example, companies came to you and asked if you had any graduates coming through, or obviously you're going to work on networking and all that, but was there any other ways of helping us find a job opposed to just those standard websites or advertisements?
Yeah. So Tyler, we don't apply to many jobs. So that's the thing. So what I will be teaching you is how to talk to companies that don't have jobs. That's where most of our graduates are getting work. So I'll paint you a scenario. So we've got someone came into my or just DM'd me actually on Discord before about a month before Christmas and said, "Hey, Ro, I'm a bit stumped. I've applied for a couple of roles. I'm quite picky about the company I want to work for. I really want a company that does really good visual experiences online. And I've talked to these 5, and although I've had great conversations, I haven't really found anything. And I said to them, hey, I know you've got that real niche that you want to work with, but how about looking at some bigger companies that might have a larger tech team, but part of that tech team is doing that. Not the whole tech team, but part of it. And she said, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that. So we jotted down another 5 companies. None of them had jobs, okay? And we went through and we contacted these 5 companies, and we waited, and nothing really happened, okay? It was just before Christmas. It's not the best time to job hunt, to be honest. But anyway, over the Christmas break, she said, hey, someone came back to me who had said no, who don't have anything. Someone came back to me saying they might have a position, but it's not an entry level position, and it's not exactly in the area that I want. And I said, okay, well, would you be interested in having an interview? Is it something you just want to say no to? And she said, oh, I've already said yes to having an interview because I like the company, and the person that contacted me was a really good person. Anyway, so last week I talked to them a little bit about the interview process, and they had an interview, and it went really well. And they've actually been offered a role at this organization. It's not the perfect role because it's not exactly the niche they wanted. They're not actually going to be creating amazing visual experiences, but they are working with someone who that's their primary job. And also, if this work goes well, I hope they'll be able to sort of transition into that. There wasn't a job advertised, okay, and there wasn't, no one else saw that opportunity. They were the only person to contact that company for a job, and even that company said no, okay. So this is just an example of how different, I suppose, we approach things, and how, I mean, it seems logical. It seems kind of easy in a way when you say it like this, but it's actually really hard to do because you have to know who to contact. You have to actually, meet with people and do the difficult thing of asking for help and asking for feedback and advice and that sort of stuff. You have to get rejected, and that getting rejected is hard. So there's a huge amount of sort of work that goes into what seems like a lot of dead ends. But in the end, these dead ends actually do slowly work. And I don't remember how many times I've said to folks, look, leave the door open. Like, make sure every single person you've talked to, you're not writing them off saying you'll never have a job for me. You're saying, oh, this person's been a great contact, but they don't have something for me right now. And following up with that, hey, thank you so much for your help. I'd love to stay in touch. I do love what you do. Let me know if anything comes up. And I do this time and time again. And that sort of activity slowly builds opportunities. Does that make sense, Tyler? I'm not sure I've answered the question right.
Nah, that's awesome, man. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't know if you feel comfortable, but I mean, if you wanted to talk to me a little bit about your background, because a lot of people think that their background and what they've been doing up till they come to Dev Academy is irrelevant, and that's really far from the truth. Like, I don't mind if you've been a machine operator or a butcher or a lawyer or an accountant. It just doesn't matter. Like, if you've done any sort of work or study before, there are going to be skills there that you can apply to tech. And one of the misnomers as well is that if you come through Dev Academy, that you can only apply for graduate or really entry-level roles. Again, that's not true, particularly if you've had a career behind you already. You might start off in a role that doesn't have a huge amount of responsibility, but if you've had 10 years, for example, in hospitality, and you've had to run teams and manage teams and train and mentor folks, then any employer is going to look to utilize those skills in this new tech environment. If they don't, they're wasting money, okay? And you'll find that if you've got any sort of career behind you, an employer is going to be looking to invest in those skills that you bring from that career.
Sweet, thank you.
Hope that helps, Tyler.
Is that why you hired me out of the hospitality industry so I could make the food at our away days?
Well, I did want to learn from the best, Joseph, as your sous chef. If anyone's got specific questions about the job hunt, please contact us. I would be able to talk to you in more detail about how you might take that on, about how your previous career might be applicable in tech, about any fears or reservations you've got about the job hunt. I'd say it's the biggest thing. That and the imposter syndrome of just doing a program in which is going to be fast, intense, and really hard. But the job hunt is real, and it's tough. So definitely contact me. The AI has put up my email there, and yeah, you can have a chat one-on-one. Well, if there's no more questions, folks, I will say goodbye. Thank you very much for the questions that have come through. It's great to have you all here. As I say, we'll be contacting everyone with an email of this recording, and also with a couple of other videos of some of our grads that have done these sort of presentations before. And we'll also be following up, probably just with a call or an email, to see if you've got any more questions as well. But please don't feel shy about emailing me. It's just my first name at devacademy.co.nz. Really happy to answer any questions. We could jump on a Zoom call and have a chat, or just talk over the phone, whatever you prefer.
Yeah,
All
same
right.
goes for me as well. I'm just also my name Joseph at devacademy.co.nz. And yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming. It was great to see you.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, folks. We'll catch you later.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.